Welcome to Extra Mile. Tonight we speak to Dr. Kennedy Hongo, HSC. That's a head of state commendation. He's a mentee of Dr. Geoffrey William Griffin, the founder of Starehe Boys Center. He's a missionary, an educationist, a motivational speaker, a preacher, a politician, a private secretary to the governor for Kisumu County, Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, and also in charge of town management. Daktari, karibu sana.
Thank you very much, my brother John.
Yes.
What a great honor to be here today.
Yes.
After very many years, but I'm so glad to be given another chance at KBC.
Absolutely. Probably because we will dwell a bit on issues of education, because they're very important. But begin by painting a picture for us how it was like to be under Griffin, again being his mentee, and at some point interacting with him while you were in the institution at Starehe Boys Center, and even to his last moment, his last breath, you were with him. Tell us how it was to be, working with Dr. Griffin.
First of all, my brother, I must admit that Geoffrey William Griffin was one of the best men that this country has ever produced. Even though he was a white man, but I always say he was a white-black man. That is one thing unique about him, that he was a man of British descent, but born in Kenya, growing up in Kenya, understanding us for who we are, and finally doing whatever he did for the good of this country. Of all men and women that I've ever met, if you would want to talk about a passionate man, a really role model, a man of integrity, a man who was what he said and what he was. His word and his character, his activities were synchronized. He is not a person who would speak what he would not do. And he's not a man who would speak to impress you. He would speak the truth for the truth's sake. He always taught us that do what is right for the sake of right. The other thing that I would remember so well of Griffin was his level of patriotism. One of the things that he told us was, given a coffee cup to wash it better than it's ever been washed before. In other words, given any job to do, any opportunity to serve, give your very best. Those are things that to date I still remember. And the other thing would say that, second is good, but first is best. In other words, aim for the best at all times.
And I'm sure these are values he instilled in you as his students at Starehe Boys Center. But whenever you look at Starehe Boys Center, there appears to be another chain of values that exists within Starehe. And when you try to backtrace them, they are all traced to Dr. Griffin. Other than, honesty and working hard, what other values did Dr. Griffin instill in his students at Starehe Boys Center?
First and foremost, he was like a father to all of us. In fact, one of his pride was speaking the words such as, I'm the only man who has so many children without a wife. Most of us would have mothers, but he was so proud of himself as a father. So he provided that fatherhood to many, many of us, and so us as his children. So like a caring father, you'd want to do the best for your family. And I believe that also motivated him. And the other thing that was so wonderful about him, he was a role model. He led from the front. He never asked you to do what he himself would never do. One basic principle that I really appreciated about Griffin was greatness in simplicity. Just like Jesus Christ, greatness in simplicity, where you're willing to come down to the level of a person that you want to bring up. And that is the reason why that most of us saw him as the perfect role model. So that value of greatness in simplicity, which very few people do have, but he had it, he demonstrated it, and then he showed that care and concern. He worked for public good. In other words, he understood the very cardinal principles of life: service and contribution.
Service and contribution. And that is what, of course, has taken you to being the first chief of staff in Kisumu County for Governor, the former Governor Jack Ranguma and his private secretary. And now again, after another administration, you're serving as private secretary to the governor who succeeded Jack Ranguma, who is Professor Anyang' Nyong'o. But very interestingly, when you talk about Dr. Griffin, his value for education, and never before has education been tested as it is being tested right now with the school fires we're seeing across the country. And one wonders, probably as an educationist yourself and a person who has learned values from Dr. Griffin, what is the missing link in our education sector that we are finding ourselves at this point where school fires are the order of the day?
How I wish that our country, having produced a great man in the name of Griffin, would not go too far to look for the best solution to run schools and even how to bring up young people. He had it all. He understood what it is to create a school. That's a school. If you got into Griffin's office, over his head you'll find the words of Aristotle that there is a form of education that should be given to our children, not because it is noble and necessary, but because it befits a free man. We have two forms of education. One form for the production of free men or free women, another form for the production of enslaved men and enslaved women. People that are not free, people that are built from the level of mistrust to trust. In other words, you step into a school and you begin from the level of mistrust. You're not trusted. So there's so many rules, the do's and don'ts, and basically you're like put in a jail. So one of the things that Griffin understood so well that I prayed that our nation would understand is that when it comes to the building of schools, you have two models: a gaol model, a jail model, or a prison model, or a home model. It's a choice. But most of our schools generally are run like jail. And that is the reason why we have problems. If you want to really minimize problems...
They run like jail?
They run like jail. Well, the moment you receive a letter, the letter comes with the rules, the things that you must never do, and the things that you're allowed to do. You walk into the school, you are supposed to stick to the school rules that you don't even know about. You're a new boy, a new girl who has just arrived. The do's are so many, and the rules of you must never wear this kind of clothes, you have to be in this kind of, you know. Griffin's letter was, come to school, come immediately. Number one, you will not even see any school rule in your letter, in the calling letter. When you get into Starehe, you had a chance to make mistakes, to learn, and the first half term was basically learning. As a new child, you're free to make any mistake, but you're being educated, you're being taught, you're being shown the do's and the don'ts. This is the consequence of this. That is the consequence of this. He gave you the chance to learn the value of trust, that you are trusted. You are an important person in this family. If you are given a chance to know that you are important, chances are you will also behave in as an important person.
And yet, Daktari, in the absence of, discipline, in the absence of strict adherence to rules, human beings will operate like they're in the jungle.
What is discipline first of all? The definition of discipline as per the late Dr. Jeffrey William Griffin was, discipline is not discipline unless it's self-discipline. So people will never do what they don't know. You'll never do what you don't know. Neither will you do what you have never thought about. Or you can do something by accident. So it is important, first of all, to convey a particular knowledge, a particular information. People must be taught. People must be educated, shown the way, and then set the standards. So you cannot expect me to first do what I don't even know. So the first thing that you have to focus on is proper induction. So you go to most of the schools that we have today, and by the way, I would want to say, John, that teachers, head teachers are very important people in a country because it is teachers by their students that determines the thinking of tomorrow. Nearly all of us, we are produce of those wonderful people that are called teachers. So then we need our teachers to understand that the role they play sometime is even more important than our own mothers and fathers. As the saying goes, in a country or in a place where everybody's blind.
Let me cut you short because it's something you talk about when you're talking about discipline and order. There is an established mechanism. There must be, you know, teaching. And probably that's where the problem is. That these children have no one to look up to.
Yeah, absolutely. There must be not just teaching, but proper induction. And then as we are inducting them, we must also give them the understanding of why, the why behind whatever is being done. Why are we inducting you this way? Why are we guiding you to follow this path and not this other path? And one of the things that I believe my mentor did well in was proper induction. And proper induction is not just by writing the rules, these do's and don'ts. Even the do's and the don'ts are okay for somebody who's being inducted, so that you know the consequence, just like a child learning by touching fire, then knows the consequence of touching fire is that it will burn you. So proper induction, so that you have the right knowledge, the right information, the right mindset, so that the consequence of all that, you are able to do what is right for the sake of right.
You appear to suggest, Dr. That from the onset, we have gotten it wrong in terms of inducting students or children into school. And I'm asking, here we are. We're finding ourselves in a situation where schools are banning every day. If you were to advise stakeholders in the education sector, you are a stakeholder yourself.
I am.
What would you do?
In fact, the first thing I would do, if today I am invited into any school, the first thing I would do, I would go there like a father to those children. I would have a conversation with them. I would sit with them. I'll talk to them about their life and their future. I will help them to understand the value of a school. A school is not a place of suffering. A school is not a place of just punishment. A school is one of the best places on earth because it is like an airport where you have a chance to fly to whichever direction you want to go. A school is like that great farm with all kinds of fruits, and it is you to pick what you want. So I will give them a perspective first. I will spend time helping them to understand that, you know, the purpose of life is a life of purpose. You are born into this world for a cause. You are not an accidental occurrence. And therefore, when you are in a school, we are simply here to try to unlock the world for you so that the real you would show up when time comes. So here we are only giving you possibilities and options of helping you to understand the direction that your future should take. So that is the first thing, that we must help our children to understand that a school is a great place. And then we don't just pick it. We've got to act it. We've got to do it so that we as teachers, we as headmasters or heads of school, we have to show that by our conduct, by our actions, by our manners. So that is key. Sit with your children, have a talk with them. I want to say this. Starehe, under the leadership of the late Jeffrey William Griffin, had even a school parliament and a school cabinet. Parliament met every Friday, where we were able to discuss our internal affairs, our issues, our problems. If the thing that happened over the course of the week that you as a boy you never liked, whether it came from the side of teachers or from the side of the boys themselves or the director himself, we were able to sit as a family and talk about it. And Griffin would be able to defend his action or accept that, oh, I didn't see that, I am willing to change.
All right, let me take you back to the jail narrative. You're the one.
Yeah, the jail
narrative. You're the one who brought it up.
The Gaul narrative.
Something very interesting, in we're talking about the running of the education sector, and listening to principals and teachers saying the crash program introduced after COVID-19 could be probably exacerbating the situation, as it were. I'm bringing that jail narrative that you've talked about. Do you think, probably, from the setting of this crash program, where people are trying to recover in one way or another, added pressure or exerted pressure to the students in school?
It is true, because most of the time it is fear and frustration that ultimately lead to stress, pressure, and any in a pressurized environment, if you just strike it like that, it blows up. So much pressure, so much stress, and no way to release it. What happens? What we are seeing. And this is a real challenge on our good teachers and our heads. Dealing with children that possibly don't have a way to get that pressure out. Now, how did the late Griffin do it? Because normally, and if you look at the history of strikes in Kenya and even banning of schools, most of the time it was in second term. Second term, just when mocks were coming, and now the real you is going to be known because we are beginning to do those exams that are revealing who is who. And that was because of that fear, frustration. Maybe a child has not been properly prepared, and now he's confused, and any small thing that, like a matchbox, a box and petrol in the room, you strike and it blows up. This is the time that, as I've said, real headmasters, real teachers, real parents must find time to sit with their children.
All right.
And give them meaning to life.
All right. As we wind up, Daktari, give him meaning to life. But we must punish this incident of arson. The Ministry of Education is proposing that anybody who is involved in arson attacks is never given a chance to go back to school again. But there are others who are saying more punitive measures need to be instilled, in the sense that, for example, in an incident of arson that has resulted to fatalities, that person is charged with first-degree murder. For a child who is in secondary school, do you support, or are there any rehabilitative measures we can take to keep this at bay?
It cannot be a one-track way.
Okay.
Yeah, it cannot be a one-track way. Some people will change as a result of rehabilitation. Some people will understand their problem when they are punished. Sometimes we think that punishment and discipline are twin sisters, or they are same. But there are people that learn by making mistakes. So yes, we have to punish mistakes done. But at the same time, we also need to counsel some of these children. We need to talk to them. At the same time, it's not just the work of teachers alone, even the parents and even the very government. One of the problems is there's a lot of bad manners around us. Bad manners, people behaving badly. And then suddenly when you've been behaving badly, and then the next minute you appear to be very good, the person wonders, has Paul suddenly become a Saul, or has Saul suddenly become a Paul? So if we've not been consistent in the way we do our things, then chances are we are not the right people to bring the necessary change. So we've got to find the right people who have got right manners, right character, right standards, and right value systems that then become the role model for our children. So that even the one that should be talking to them should be people that are worthy the salt, people that are real model in the real sense, people that have a character. What's the point when kids know that you are a terror and then suddenly you want to talk to them about love? Will it work? So we've got to have holistic approach.
Right.
It may require concerted effort from all the stakeholders.
I'm thinking, going back to the first bit of a question, these are young people, young minds.
Yeah.
But the proposal by the Ministry of Education is that once you're involved in arson, you're banished from school. You will never come back to the regular school system. Is that a justified decision?
I don't know whether to say yes or no. What I want us to think about, John, first of all, even as we make decisions, one of the biggest problems is that we take adults' heads and place these big heads of adults onto the small toddlers and expect the toddlers to see the adults' view. That is one big problem. And that is why sometimes even in these very, very schools we're talking about, a child passes through a fence, 2 weeks home, and 2 rolls of barbed wire. certain ways of doing things may not necessarily help us to achieve what we want to achieve. So first of all, as adults, let us recognize the fact that we're dealing sometimes with the children who are still thinking like children. So come to their level and let them see things from a child's perspective, and it is from there that you then move them to the next level. So I would only pray that our leaders that are responsible for education would always remember that yesterday's gangsters could actually become today's angels.
Wow.
And yesterday's angels could become today's devils. And let me conclude,
today's gangster could actually become a bigger gangster tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. So as we handle human beings, we must realize that people change. There must always be an elbow room for change. Okay. And finally, let me say this, John. I'm a very firm believer in the methodology of the late Jeffrey William Griffin, the systems and methods, that if anybody took time to understudy the ways of that old man that left us, you will never go wrong with matters of education. And Starehe Boys Center and School has proven the same to me and to the rest of the world. That when a new administration that changed from those ways came in, that center almost went to the graveyard. But when the few old boys came back 3 years ago, led by Joseph Maura, Fred O'Connor, and the team that they're working with, and brought back those old ways of the late Griffin, my friend, the great school is on its way to the top.
All right, shining lights.
So it works.
Boys Center.
It works. The methods work.
It works.
So then, what works? Work on it.
All right.
Why reinvent the wheel?
What works? Work on it. Why reinvent the will? The jail mentality.
So let's get out of the jail mentality and come to the home model.
Okay. Jail mentality, home model, and I think that's the silver bullet to end some of the problems we're seeing in our education sector, and of course with this brain. Run for political office, will you?
Let me say this
very quickly.
That's a very interesting question.
Yes.
Politics is not a dirty game. It's the best thing, is our lives.
Okay.
So everyone is a politician. Only a few are elected to become what they become.
Okay.
That's my belief.
All right.
So if I get a chance to be made an MP by the people, to be made a governor, to be made a president, I would go for it. If I get a person who wants to become any of those things, get in there and be the change we want to see.
Dr. Kennedy Hongo, ladies and gentlemen, talking to us about, the education sector and learning from the story of Dr. Griffin tonight. That's why we put a cap on Extra Mile. Senior Nyama is up next with business, and after that, we have Karen Kibet with the latest in sports.